My name is Briony, and for 52 years, I've lived by one simple rule: family first. Every morning for the past 3 decades, I woke up before dawn, tied my hair into a neat bun, and drove to the office I helped build from the ground up. It wasn't just a business, it was our family's legacy. I poured in the hours, the sweat, the endless weekends, believing that sacrifice would bind us together forever. But I was wrong. The conference room smelled faintly of coffee and betrayal that morning. My 3 grown children sat across the table: Thomas, the eldest with his father's sharp jawline; Rachel, the middle child with her restless ambition; and Daniel, the youngest, who used to cling to my skirts when he was 5. Now their voices were cold. Their eyes avoided mine. "Mom," Rachel said carefully, "we've decided it's time for you to step back. The board agrees. You've done enough. It's time for the next generation to lead." Her words sliced me open like glass. I blinked, searching their faces for softness, for hesitation, for love. Instead, I saw only calculation. Thomas leaned in. "It's not personal. You'll still have your shares. But we need fresh leadership. Clients want energy, innovation. You can retire, travel, relax." Retire? Relax? After decades of grinding so they could have a future? Inside, my chest burned. My thoughts scattered. They're cutting me out. My own children. I tried to speak, but the lump in my throat was heavy. "So this is it? After everything I gave up? You're discarding me?" Daniel, the one I thought would defend me, wouldn't even look at me. He just muttered, "It's for the best." Silence filled the room, heavy as a coffin. That night, I sat in the dim light of my kitchen, hands trembling around a chipped coffee mug. Memories flooded me: packing lunches, late-night balance sheets, cheering them at soccer games, missing anniversaries so the company could survive. I had given them everything, and in return, they handed me an exile wrapped in polite words. But grief quickly turned to something sharper. Beneath the sting, a spark caught fire. They thought I was finished, disposable, a relic. They had no idea who they had just awakened. I whispered into the dark, almost a vow: "If they want me gone, I'll show them just how unforgettable I can be." And as the idea formed, as my pulse steadied, I saw it clearly. I wouldn't fight to get back in. No, I would build something new, something stronger, and I would take their empire apart piece by piece. The morning after my exile, I woke up not to despair, but to resolve. Sunlight crept through the blinds, striping the kitchen table with pale gold. The house was quiet, too quiet. For the first time in decades, there were no urgent calls, no spreadsheets waiting, no family expecting me at the office. But my mind was restless. I pulled out an old leather-bound notebook, the same one I used when the company was just a dream scrawled in ink. Its pages still smelled faintly of dust and ambition. As I flipped through sketches of old business plans, client lists, even recipes for survival in those lean years, an idea crystallized. My children believed they could erase me from the picture. What they forgot was this: I was the one who had drawn the picture in the first place. Every client they bragged about landing, I was the one who courted them at kitchen tables and golf outings. Every process they touted as innovation, I was the one who designed it during sleepless nights. I knew every vulnerability, every strength, every secret, and I could use it all. By noon, I was driving through town, past familiar storefronts that had once depended on my company: Mr. Lee's hardware store, Patel's boutique, the Lawson family's construction firm. Faces I hadn't seen in years, but who still nodded warmly when I passed. They remembered me, and they trusted me. At a corner cafe, I met with Janet, an old friend who had left the company after Rachel's modernization campaign squeezed her out. Janet still carried the bitterness in her eyes. "You're not the only one they burned," she told me, stirring her coffee. "Rachel cut me without hesitation, said I was too outdated. Can you believe that?" I reached across the table, gripping her hand. Then maybe we build something new. Together. Her eyes flickered with something. Hope? Maybe vengeance. You mean, compete with them? I smiled, the first real smile since my children's betrayal. Not just compete, outshine them, take their clients, one by one, until they realize the empire they stole was never theirs to begin with. That night, my notebook filled with names, numbers, and strategies. The pages bled with determination. Still, a whisper of doubt crept in. They're my children. Am I really ready to wage war against my own blood? But then I heard Rachel's words echoing. You've done enough. Time to step back. And the hesitation hardened into resolve. The battle wasn't just for my pride. It was for justice, for the truth of who built everything they now held in their hands. As midnight struck, I closed the notebook and whispered to the empty house. This war starts tomorrow. The next morning, I dressed not in business suits, but in armor, figuratively. A crisp blouse, strong heels, and the look of someone who had been underestimated for too long. I started with Janet. Together, we made a list of every client my children were neglecting, the ones too small for their shiny new strategies. They called them low value. I called them loyal. By midweek, I was already in living rooms and boardrooms, shaking hands, drinking tea, listening to frustrations my children had ignored. Rachel never returns our calls, Mr. Lee complained, sliding me a folder of invoices. But you always did. Because you matter, I said simply, and his face softened with the recognition of respect he hadn't felt in years. Word spread quietly. The old matriarch was back, not as a ghost, but as a rival. Still, revenge required more than relationships. It needed structure. So, I rented a modest office on the edge of town. Peeling paint, buzzing fluorescent lights. But it was mine. Our war room. Janet and I filled the walls with charts, client profiles, strategies. I hadn't felt so alive in years. My blood thrummed with the thrill of starting over, of building not from necessity, but from fire. One evening, while pinning up a list of potential investors, Janet glanced at me. Briony, you know this means war with your own children. Once we start, there's no turning back. I paused, staring at the name Rachel scrawled in bold letters. They declared war the moment they cut me out, I whispered. I'm just answering. But even as the words left my lips, my chest tightened. These were my children, my babies. Was I truly ready to watch them fall? Before I could answer my own doubts, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A voice I hadn't heard in years crackled on the line. Briony, it's Mark Lawson. I heard what happened. Listen, your kids think they can push you aside, but I've got information about Thomas. Something you'll want to know. My grip on the phone tightened. Thomas, my eldest, the one who had led the betrayal. What information? I asked, my voice low. A pause. Then Mark said, meet me tomorrow, alone. The line went dead. The next morning, I drove across town to the address Mark Lawson had given me. A faded diner off Route 17, the kind of place where secrets slid between plates of eggs and weak coffee. Inside, Mark was already waiting in a corner booth. He looked older, heavier, but his eyes carried the same sharpness I remembered from the construction days. Briony, he said, rising to shake my hand. It's been a long time. Not long enough, I muttered, sliding into the booth. What's this about Thomas? Mark leaned in, lowering his voice. Your son has been making side deals, not just shady ones, illegal. Kickbacks, under-the-table contracts. He's been siphoning money through shell companies. My stomach twisted. Thomas, the child I trusted to lead, had been poisoning the very company I built. Why are you telling me this? I asked, searching his face. Because Rachel and Daniel don't know. And if the truth comes out, Thomas could bring the whole business down. I figured you should decide whether to let it crash or to use it. The weight of his words pressed down on me. Betrayed once by blood, now handed a weapon sharp enough to cut them deeper. I stirred my coffee, staring at the swirling cream. Do I expose him? Do I risk destroying all three of them? Mark added, You didn't hear it from me, but if you dig, you'll find the proof. Bank accounts, contracts, follow the paper trail. He slid a folded piece of paper across the table. An address. A starting point. I pocketed it, my pulse quickening. That night, I sat in my office, Janet watching me pace. If this is true, I said, clutching the paper, Thomas isn't just arrogant, he's criminal. Janet frowned. And if you use this, Briony, it won't just be business. It'll be blood. I stopped pacing, staring at the charts and names plastered on our walls. This was always blood, I whispered. I picked up my pen and drew a line through Thomas's name. The war had just turned personal. The address Mark gave me wasn't glamorous. A nondescript office plaza with sun-faded numbers and a crooked "for lease" sign. If corruption had a mailing address, it would look like this. Suite 204 smelled like printer toner and stale carpet. Janet picked the lock with a tension bar I didn't ask her to explain. Inside, a single desk, a humming desktop tower, and 4 banker boxes labeled with neat block letters. Consulting, vendors, AR, Q4. Shell companies don't breathe without paperwork, I murmured. Let's see their lungs. We photographed everything. Invoices paid to Northern Ridge Advisors, LLC. A subcontractor agreement with no scope and an oddly round monthly retainer. Routing numbers highlighted in yellow like breadcrumbs. Janet found the prize at the bottom of the vendor's box, a thumb drive in a plastic sleeve. She grinned. If Thomas is laundering, somebody kept a ledger. Back at our tiny office, we worked under the halo of a flickering lamp. Janet imaged the thumb drive like a pro, then opened the files. Spreadsheets bloomed across the screen. Dates, wire amounts, memo lines like strategic facilitation and market access. Classic, Janet said. Kickback language dressed in a tie. I felt the mix again. Ache and anger. I had taught Thomas to tie his first tie. Now I was untying the knot he'd wrapped around my life's work. We needed a specialist, someone who could translate whispers into evidence. I called Maya Chen, a forensic accountant who'd once run point on a tricky audit for us, back when ethics were more than a mission statement word. She answered on the second ring. Briony, it's been a minute. I need a quiet audit, I said. Independent, fast, and legal. I won't break the law to catch a crime. Good line, Maya replied. Send me what you've got. If it's as bad as you think, we build a compartmentalized file and timestamp everything. By afternoon, Maya was at our war room with a travel scanner and a calm, surgical focus. She layered transaction maps like clear sheets on an overhead projector. Old school, deliberate. Arrows, dates, bank aliases. A spider's web where Thomas sat fat and still at the center. Your son didn't invent this, Maya said, drawing a clean circle around a company name. Northern Ridge existed 2 years before your transition plan. He stepped into it. So who built the door? I asked. Maya tapped another node. This, a boutique consultancy that mysteriously got 3 of your biggest clients, and they used your internal pricing model to underbid you by exactly 2.5%. Janet looked up. That's our private metric. I felt my jaw set. Someone leaked it, or stole it. We stared at the map, the lines crisscrossing like scars. Family, business, betrayal, overlaid until the picture blurred. I could have taken it all to the authorities, but it would scorch everything, including employees who had nothing to do with this. And I wanted my children to face truth, not just charges. 2 tracks, I said finally. 1. Maya documents everything, quiet, airtight. 2. We move on clients, not with gossip, deliverables. We'll win by being better, and the paper trail will be our insurance. Janet's eyes brightened. I'll start outreach. Small business owners first. They remember you. We split the list and hit the phones. Words traveled faster than my grief ever could. By week's end, we had 6 exploratory calls, 3 NDAs signed, and 1 pilot proposal for Lawson Construction with performance guarantees my kids would never risk. At night, I wrote service packages, transition plans, risk matrices. My handwriting steadied the more I sketched the future, not a comeback, an evolution. On Friday, a courier arrived at our door. No return address. Inside, a cease and desist letter from my old company's legal team, accusing me of tortious interference and misappropriation of proprietary methods. I read it twice, then a third time, and laughed without humor. They were trying to terrify me with language I used to approve. Maya skimmed it and shrugged. Bluff. They don't allege specific acts because they don't want discovery. If they sue, I subpoena their books. Thomas can't survive sunlight. Then we keep going, I said. We launched the Lawson pilot on a rainy Monday. I wore a navy blazer that felt like armor. The Lawson boardroom echoed with distant thunder as I laid out timelines, safety controls, and contingency budgets. You always treated us like partners, not targets, Mr. Lawson said, signing. Let's build something steadier this time. He slid the pen to me. The signature felt like reclaiming my own name. That night, I returned to the office to find the door ajar. My stomach dropped. Inside, drawers pulled, papers displaced by careful hands. Nothing obvious was missing, until I saw it. Our wall map. A single red thread had been lifted and moved, pinned deliberately from Northern Ridge to Thomas. A calling card, a message, "We see you." My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered, breath thin. Yes? A voice I knew better than my own replied, steady and familiar. Mom, stop. Thomas. He let the silence sit like a weight between us. Then, you don't understand what you're walking into. I looked at the moved thread, the careful precision of the intrusion. I understand enough, I said. Enough to know you've forgotten who taught you to build and to break. He exhaled. If you keep going, everyone gets hurt. I already am, I said softly. And it was you. The line clicked off. No goodbye. I stood in the center of the small office and felt something resolve inside me. Not rage, clarity. I turned to Maya and Janet. We accelerate, lock files offline, rotate access, and we move the big piece. Janet frowned. Which piece? I pointed to the top right of the board, where a client name sat in neat blue letters. Halberd Foods, I said. Their contract renews in 30 days. They were my first whale. I know their pain points better than anyone alive. Maya nodded slowly. If you flip Halberd, your kids lose a third of projected cash flow. And Thomas loses cover, I said. He can't hide skims when the river runs low. The storm outside broke, rain drumming the windows like a countdown. We drafted the pitch through the night. Transparent pricing, delivery guarantees, a rapid response team with names and faces, not just buzzwords. At dawn, I hit send. A clean email, a clear ask, a promise I intended to keep. Minutes later, a reply landed. Short, polite. Briony, let's talk today. 3 p.m., confidential. I felt the future tilt. The office phone rang before I could breathe. Janet picked up, listened, went pale, then covered the receiver. It's the bank. There's been an attempted transfer flagged from your personal line of credit. To where? I asked. She swallowed. To Northern Ridge Advisors. I stared at the board, at the threads, at my own name. Someone wasn't just watching. They were reaching into my pockets. The bank held the transfer, but the taste in my mouth was metallic, like fear bitten down to blood. Maya put the caller on speaker. Yes, this is Ms. Chen on behalf of Ms. Price. Flag the account, freeze the line of credit, and send the fraud affidavit to my email. We'll file a police report within the hour. I watched Janet lock the office door, then pull the blinds until our small war room turned dusky. She slid me a hardware key and a new phone in shrink wrap. No more SMS codes, she said. Air-gapped backups, offline copies, and a fresh number that only we know. I breathed out slowly. They didn't just look. They tried to take. Maya's eyes were steady. Good. They showed their hand. That gives us a timestamp and a trail. I nodded. But the anger that had fueled me all week had curdled into something more fragile. My children knew my passwords once. They knew my habits. The idea that Thomas, or someone working for him, had reached into my pocket felt intimate in a way the boardroom exile hadn't. At 2:14 p.m., I stood in the mirror of the restroom down the hall, checking that my blazer sat right. Halberd Foods at 3. The first whale. I practiced a smile that was not soft and not hard, just clear. Janet drove us. Rain had rinsed the sky to a pale blue, and Route 9 slid by in long, quiet ribbons. At 2:46, we pulled into Halberd's campus, a low sprawl of brick and glass with delivery bays humming like throats. Inside, the receptionist offered bottled water and a neutral smile that said, "We know exactly who you are, and we haven't decided what to think." At 3:02, a woman in a tailored charcoal suit opened the conference room door. "Ms. Price, I'm Elena Morales, COO." Her handshake was firm. Her eyes were the kind that measured not just numbers, but character. "Thank you for seeing me," I said. "We keep long memories here," she replied. "Yours is complicated." I sat. "Complicated I can work with." We began with the pain points: freight volatility, supplier slippage, recall risk, the sinuous math of margins in a world where tomatoes could go from cheap to precious overnight. I didn't pitch so much as diagnose, offering a service spine I'd written at 2 a.m., real-time supplier telemetry, transparent pricing, a rapid response task force you could call by first name. Elena listened without interrupting. When I finished, she folded her hands. "2 issues. Tell me." "First, your children pitched us last week. Their price undercut the field by exactly 2.5%. Her mouth tightened. "That used to be your internal shadow discount." I kept my face still. "It was. So either you stole it from them, or they stole it from you." She let the sentence hover. "Second, we received a lawyerly letter this morning. Concerns about potential tortious interference should we entertain a deal with you." I almost laughed. "The letter is a bluff. As for the discount, I won't undercut myself anymore. I'll price to truth and put the assumptions in writing. And if there's litigation, I'll indemnify you for any reasonable defense costs tied to my past employment," I said. "And I'll include a no-fault exit clause if your board gets skittish. But Elena, if we deliver, I expect the renewal at the same rate. No games." Something softened just behind her sternness. "You always spoke plain, Briony. It's rare." My phone buzzed against my palm. A push alert. New sign-in attempt blocked. Headquarters IP. I flipped the device over without looking. If they wanted to rattle me, they'd have to try harder. Elena glanced at the screen. "If we do this, I need more than promises." "Then look," I said, sliding a thin folder across the table. The Lawson pilot schedule, the transition kit, the emergency playbook with names, numbers, and escalation ladders. No jargon. Just work. She read for a long moment. "And if your son comes after you publicly?" "He already has," I said. "But I'm not here to fight in the press. I'm here to move freight and hit delivery windows. You know what I can do because you remember what I did." Elena closed the folder. "Compliance will need 48 hours. If they clear, I'll sign an LOI for a 90-day pilot." The relief that washed through me wasn't triumphant. It was clean. "Thank you." As we shook hands, my watch buzzed again. A text from Maya. "Northern Ridge's registered agent matches a shell tied to Jason Pike, Thomas's college roommate. I can tie money flows by morning." I typed back, "Good. Keep it compartmentalized." Janet and I stepped into the pale light of late afternoon. For a second, the air tasted like the inside of a new start, paper and ozone. "Coffee to celebrate?" she asked. "After we file the police report," I said. "No victories without locks." We returned to our office to find a small stack of mail on the floor inside the door, slid under, not delivered. On top, a certified envelope. Inside, notice of a shareholder concern filed by the company's counsel, alleging that I had accessed proprietary frameworks post-exit. Maya skimmed it. They're building the narrative. If they can paint you as the thief, they scare clients and chill your momentum. Then we outrun the chill, I said, and we let the facts thaw it. We drove to the precinct. The fluorescent light in the report room felt like an interrogation unto itself. I told the officer about the flagged transfer, the threats, the history. He typed steadily, neutrally, as if my family drama were just another Tuesday. When he handed me the case number, the paper was warm from the printer. Evidence of a line crossed. Outside, twilight had already thinned to smoke. We headed back, silent, the way women get silent when they've said everything that can be said for the day. At the office door, my keys rattled. The lock turned with the tiniest resistance, as if remembering the earlier intrusion. Inside, the room looked unchanged at first glance. Then I saw it. Our wall map. Again. A new pin, glossy red, pressed into a blank space near the bottom edge. No label. Just a point. Janet frowned. That wasn't us. Maya circled slowly, eyes narrowed. They want you to feel watched. She eased the pin out with 2 fingernails and dropped it into a baggie. Good. Now we have fingerprints. I put my palms flat on the table and felt the cheap laminate cool my skin. Every message they send, we turn to evidence. Every scare tactic, a path. I was still standing there, breathing steadily, when a heavy knock hit the door. Janet looked at me. Maya looked at the pin bag. I opened. 2 officers stood in the hallway, one in uniform, one in a suit with a badge like a silver thought. Ms. Briony Price? The suited one asked. Yes. He held out a paper I recognized in form, if not in spirit. We have a warrant to seize electronic devices on premises related to an investigation of identity theft and attempted wire fraud. The room exhaled around me. For a second, the floor seemed to tilt. Maya stepped forward, voice even. Counsel is on the way. Will comply and request a device inventory. May I see the scope? The detective handed it over. My name was there, and, like a bruise blossoming, Northern Ridge Advisors. I felt a surprising calm. If they wanted our machines, fine. The real work lived in my head and in notebooks that never touched the cloud. Still, the humiliation prickled. They were turning offense into a spotlight, hoping I'd wilt. I didn't. Janet, I said quietly. Call Elena Morales in the morning. Tell her our countermeasures are live and our work continues. No delays. Janet nodded. The detective gestured to the desks. We'll begin. As they moved past, my phone vibrated in my pocket. A new email slid across the lock screen. From Elena Morales. Subject. Pilot proposal. Body. Compliance flagged a concern tonight. Before I sign tomorrow, I need to ask you one question. Off the record. Are you in danger? I stared at the words. For the first time since the exile, I let myself tell the truth in my head. Yes. I typed 2 words I had never typed to a client before. Meet earlier? Her reply came in seconds. 7 a.m., my office. Come alone. The officers powered down our machines. The room went quiet enough to hear the rain start again. At 6:58 a.m., I was already in Halbert's parking lot, watching steam rise from the asphalt like a warning. I walked in at 7 on the dot. Elena was waiting, jacket off, sleeves rolled. No small talk. Close the door, she said. Tell me the truth. I'm in danger, I answered. Not from strangers, from my own. Something in her shoulders eased, not with sympathy, but with certainty. Thank you. She slid a folder toward me. Our compliance team received an anonymous dossier last night. It alleges you stole pricing frameworks and client lists. If we sign with you and this is true, we inherit risk. I opened the folder. Screenshots, spreadsheets, email headers, the kind of paper that looks like proof until you touch it. Metadata? I asked. Elena nodded. We checked. The PDFs were generated by a workstation registered to Northern Ridge advisors. The sender used a masked relay, but the relay was paid for by a card tied to a Jason Pike. I didn't react, but heat pricked my skin. Thomas's college roommate. Elena, I said, I will not ask you to ignore risk. I'll ask you to grade it honestly. Here are my conditions, she said. 1. We sign a 90-day LOI contingent on a third-party cyber hygiene check. 2. You escrow 2 months of fees that we can draw if you fail an SLA. 3. You agree to an ethical firewall. No former proprietary artifacts, no grayware. 4. If this escalates publicly, you don't fight it in the press. You deliver. I can live with that, I said. She studied my face. You always could. For a moment, silence. Then the question we both had been circling. Why are your children doing this? Elena asked. Because I gave them everything and forgot to leave them hunger. Because power is heavier than gratitude. Because I raised leaders and not listeners. I made mistakes, I said. The worst one was thinking loyalty could be inherited. Elena nodded once, like a verdict. Legal will draft the LOI by noon. If your house burns down, ours doesn't have to with it. But Briony, if you deliver clean, we'll renew. We shook hands. Her grip didn't waver. Outside, the morning had brightened into a thin strip of gold. I texted Maya. Halberd says yes, contingent. Dossier metadata ties to Northern Ridge plus Jason Pike. Her reply buzzed back immediately. Copy that. I'll mirror the files you saw. Chain of custody started. Also, a hearing notice just hit the court docket. Ex parte temporary restraining order to stop you from soliciting covered clients. Hearing in 48 hours. I stopped on the steps. They were trying to box me before I could move the big piece. A man in a navy windbreaker stepped into my path. Ms. Price? He held out a manila envelope. You've been served. I took it. Read the caption. My children's company, Vivi Me. The words didn't cut. They clarified. Janet pulled up to the curb, eyes searching my face. Bad? Predictable, I said, climbing in. We prepare the opposition brief. Narrow the definition of covered client. Document prior relationships. And we show harm, their harm, to competition if they freeze the market. Janet nodded, already dialing. Maya looped in counsel. Hearing is at 9 a.m. day after tomorrow. Judge Patel. We drove back to the office. The desks were naked without the seized machines, but the room still hummed with will. Maya was waiting with a travel laptop. Air-gapped, cold as a scalpel. Sheaf of exhibits, she said, tapping a thin stack. Bank attempt, warrant, metadata traces, Lawson pilot, Halberd's conditional. We argue you're building a lawful enterprise and they're weaponizing process. And Pike? I asked. His LLC took 2 payments from Northern Ridge last quarter, Maya said. Memo lines say, security consulting. I can tie those dates to your account alerts. She paused. And there's one more thing. She unfolded a printout. A closed-door board memo from my old company, leaked and blurry. Rachel's name on the header. Rachel proposed the TRO, Maya said. Thomas seconded. Daniel abstained. Abstained. The smallest word. And yet it cracked something open in me. Janet watched me closely. Do you want me to reach out to Daniel? No, not yet. We spent the next hours drafting. Short paragraphs, simple exhibits. No theatrics. Just light. At noon, Elena's LOI hit my inbox with tracked changes and a clean signature line. For a moment, I let myself feel the quiet triumph of competence. Then I signed, scanned, and sent. The phone rang before the confirmation ping. I expected a reporter. It wasn't. Mom. Rachel's voice was steady, professional, the tone she uses to sell storms as opportunities. Whatever you think you're doing with Halberd, she said, it ends today. The TRO is just a start. We will bury you in process. Hello to you too, I said. How's your heart? Silence, then a scoff. Don't try that. Someone moved a red pin on my wall, Rachel. Someone slid a warrant into my night like a note under a door. This isn't corporate, it's personal. You made it personal, she said, when you walked out and tried to take what you built for us. I didn't walk out. I was escorted. I let the steel into my voice. And I'm not taking anything. I'm building. Her breath caught just enough to be human. You could still stop. You could still help us. There it was. The sliver under the skin. Fear. What's happening to Thomas? I asked softly. A click. She hung up. I stared at the phone, then at Janet. They're not aligned. No family ever is, Janet said gently. The rest of the day moved like chess. We filed. We notarized. We stapled numbers to narrative. Truth. Formatted. At 5:12 p.m., my new phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, a photo of a diner booth. Mark Lawson, alone, eyes on the door. Then a text. Don't make him wait again. He won't keep covering for long. I read it twice. Covering for whom? I whispered. Maya stepped to my shoulder. That came from a prepaid tied to a cell tower 3 blocks from your house. This is close. I picked up my keys. I'm going to see Mark. Janet started to stand. I'm coming. No, I said. If they're watching, they get one target. Outside, the air had cooled to something like mercy. I drove to the diner, the same faded neon, the same cracked booths. Mark wasn't alone. Sitting across from him, half-turned, was a man with a scar that tucked into his collar and a smile that didn't touch his eyes. He looked up as I approached. Ms. Price, he said, voice easy as a blade. Jason Pike sends his regards. Mark's hand trembled on the formica. Briony, don't... The man slid a phone across the table. On the screen, a live feed of my office hallway. Our door. Our lights. We all want the same thing, he said. Stability. You bring Halbert on, the skims get messy. People panic. People talk. Accidents happen. He leaned back, the leather of his jacket whispering. Walk away from Halbert, or watch your war room become a crime scene. My pulse steadied. Not rage. Clarity. Again. I reached for the phone, and he let me. In the reflection of the black glass, my face looked older and truer. Tell Jason, I said, that I built that company without him, and I'll build this one without his permission. He smiled wider. Then we'll see you in court. He stood, smoothed his jacket, and left. The bell on the door jingled like a dare. Mark sagged. I thought I could warn you. They're in deeper than you think. How deep? I asked. He swallowed. Thomas owes money. How much? Mark said the number. It landed between us like a meteor. Outside, a truck downshifted on Route 17. The diner rattled. My phone buzzed again. 2 messages at once. First, from Elena. Board cleared the LOI. We start Monday. Second, from an unsaved number. Mom, don't fight this in court. Meet me. Alone. Rachel. I looked at Mark. At the door. At the war I had already entered. Send me everything you have, I told him, and don't call this number again. I stepped into the parking lot. The morning steam now a cold breath over the blacktop. Rachel chose a neutral place. The old botanical conservatory near the river. The one that closed during the pandemic and never reopened. Glass panes clouded with dust. A rib cage of steel beams. The echo of our shoes sounded like 2 people walking through a skeleton. She stood near a broken fountain, hands buried in the pockets of her trench coat. No smile, no preamble. Phone's off, she said, battery out. I handed her my new device and watched her drop both phones, hers and mine, into a small Faraday pouch. She'd thought this through. Of course she had. I can give you 10 minutes, I said. You'll need more, she replied. Her voice was tight, like a wire pulled too far. Mom, you're in over your head. That's what Thomas's friend tried to tell me, I said. He sent a live feed of my office. He threatened to make it a crime scene if I bring Halbert on. Rachel flinched, barely, then, quietly. Jason Pike. So you do know, I said. I know enough to be scared, she said. Thomas is leveraged. He took money when the markets tightened last year. Jason introduced him to a fund that isn't really a fund. They fronted capital to land 2 can't-lose contracts. When those went sideways, the debt didn't, I finished. She nodded. They started building side channels to make up the difference. Northern Ridge. Consultancies. It began as bridge cash. Now it's a spine. Why the TRO? I asked. Why try to freeze me out instead of cleaning house? Because if you move fast, she said, he loses the only cover he has. Growth. The only story he can sell to keep the skims unnoticed is expansion. New clients, new revenue. If Halberd flips to you, the river runs shallow, and the rocks show. So this was always about time, I said. Buying Thomas time. Her eyes shone, not with tears, but with the strain of carrying too much truth. And about panic. He's scared, Mom. He'll do stupid things, and Jason will ask for worse. You could stop him, I said. I've tried. She looked toward the glass panes, where a thin line of sunlight cut the dust. Every time I push, he reminds me who he is, what he's capable of taking with him if he falls. Then why call me? I asked. Because you don't scare easy, she said. And because I thought you'd want to know before the hearing. There's a sealed affidavit. They're going to tell Judge Patel that you accessed internal pricing data last quarter using an old credential. My jaw tightened. I didn't. I know, Rachel said. But IT logs can be made to say many things when the man who runs them owes a favor to the man with the scar. Jason owns your systems, I said. He rents them, she corrected. Long enough. For a second, wind hissed through a cracked window, a sound like a breath being held. I let mine out slowly. Rachel, I said, walk away. Testify. Bring me anything that proves this isn't just bad business, it's criminal. She laughed once, a tired sound. You think I haven't been collecting? I learned from the best. She slid a slim drive from her pocket. Board memos, Pike's consulting invoices, a draft agreement tying Northern Ridge to a procurement officer at Halberd's competitor. I didn't reach for it. You hand me that, you cross a line you can't uncross. I crossed it the day Thomas brought Pike into our house, she said. Mom, I don't want to bury you in court. I want you to survive it. What do you want from me? I asked. 2 things, she said. First, cage your anger in that courtroom. No speeches. Let your counsel speak. Second, if you win Halberd, build clean. If Thomas implodes, I need one place in this town that still does business the old way. The right way, I said. She looked at me then. Really looked. The girl who learned to read P&L sheets at our kitchen table, who memorized the smell of printer toner and late-night coffee, who wanted to run a company because she'd watched her mother build one. I'm not your enemy, Rachel whispered. Then don't act like one, I said. Withdraw the TRO. I can't, she said. But I can slow it. I can ask counsel to delay their exhibits on irreparable harm until they find a more persuasive exemplar. That buys you a day. A day, I repeated. It might be enough, she said, and slipped the drive into my hand. Chain of custody is yours now. Use it surgically, not like a bomb. We stood there with the ghost of water between us. The drive felt heavy, not with bites, with consequences. Rachel, I said quietly. Daniel abstained. She swallowed. He's not built for this. He thinks staying quiet is staying pure. Silence is a vote, I said. Remind him. Her mouth trembled, then steadied. I will. We turned at the same time when a door clanged somewhere in the belly of the conservatory. Footsteps. Not hurried. Confident. The kind that arrive with purpose. Were you followed? I asked. I took the long way, she said. But in this town, long isn't always far. The footsteps echoed, then stopped. No one appeared. The conservatory held its breath again. Rachel exhaled. There's one more thing you should know. Pike isn't just pressuring Thomas for money. He wants access to our warehouse telemetry, vendor slates, truck routes. He's fishing for ways to weaponize delays. To what end? To make us desperate, she said. Desperate people sell the rest of their house to keep the first room standing. I slipped the drive into my coat. Then we shut the doors before he knocks them down. She nodded. Be careful. You too, I said. You still carry our name. I started to turn away, then stopped. Rachel, if I win Halberd, I'm not coming for your bones. But I will come for the rot. Don't stand in front of it. She almost smiled. There's the speech you're not supposed to give in court. We walked out together, but split at the steps. She headed toward the river path. Hood up, shoulders squared. I crossed the cracked parking lot to my car. Keys ready. Eyes up. A glint near the rear bumper caught my attention. Something tucked into the wheel well. Small. Black. New. I crouched, heart steady. A tracker. Magnet mount. Not amateur work. I photographed it from 3 angles, then lifted it gently with a thin knife from my keyring and slid it into an empty gum tin. Evidence. Not panic. My phone vibrated. A number I didn't recognize. Local. I let it go to voicemail, then checked the transcript. Ms. Price, this is Clerk Alvarez from Judge Patel's chambers. Counsel for petitioner has requested to move the TRO hearing up to tomorrow at 8:00 a.m. The court is granting the request. Notice to follow. A day had turned into a handful of hours. I texted Maya and Janet. Tracker found on my car. Secured. Rachel gave us a drive. Board memos, Pike invoices, draft tie to competitors' procurement. Hearing moved to 8 a.m. tomorrow. Meet at office in 40. Maya. On my way. I'll dust the tracker and image the drive. Bring gloves. Janet. Copy. Also, bank called. Attempted login from Pike's IP again. Blocked. We're winning the small fights. I slid into the driver's seat and looked at the conservatory's glass ribs. For a moment, I saw us as we were. A mother and a daughter, hands dirty with work, planting something fragile in a place with enough light to grow. The rearview mirror flickered with movement, headlights easing into the lot, then cutting out. A dark SUV, doors opened, 2 figures. One lifted a hand in a slow, familiar wave. Thomas. He crossed the distance with a measured calm that looked like control until you saw the cracks. He stopped at my window. I lowered it halfway. Mom, he said, voice smooth as lacquer. Get in the SUV, we need to talk. Behind him, a second figure leaned against the hood, the line of a scar disappearing into his collar. Jason Pike smiled without his eyes. I didn't move. Thomas's request hung in the air between the SUV and my car like a wire. I'm not getting in, I said. We talk here, in the open. Jason's smile tilted. What an uncooperative habit. Safety habit, I replied. I recommend it. Thomas rubbed a thumb over the ridge of his jaw the way he did as a boy when he lied about homework. We're not here to fight, Mom. We're here to end this cleanly. Then start with the truth, I said. Who planted the tracker? His eyes flicked, just once, toward Jason. Paranoia doesn't suit you. Neither do warrants, I said. But we make do. Jason pushed off the SUV and came closer, hands visible, voice pleasant. Here's my suggestion. Standstill agreement. You drop Halberd, you wind down your boutique. In exchange, the company buys your shares at a generous multiple. Everybody lives happily ever after. And if I say no? Then we have the hearing, Jason said, shrug rolling. Your past access becomes a present problem. Your pilot collapses. Elena chooses certainty over romance. And the story ends with a cautionary headline about legacy founders who don't know when to retire. Thomas lifted a hand as if to soften it. You don't have to lose, Mom. Just stop. I did stop, I said. For 30 years, I stopped sleeping, stopped traveling, stopped living so you could start. And then, you stopped me. His face tightened, an old wound touching fresh air. It was the board. You are the board, I said. Let's not pretend the knife fell out of the sky. He folded his arms. And what? You're going to save the world with a 90-day pilot and a borrowed office? No, I said. I'm going to save myself. The world can fend for itself. Jason's eyes tracked the empty lot like a hunter checking wind. Time is expensive. Here's the paper. He held out a crisp envelope. Stand still and purchase terms. Take it to your lawyer. You have 12 hours. I have a hearing in less than 24, I said, which gives me not enough time to be scared. Jason's smile sharpened. Fear is a great teacher. I learned it young, I said. I graduated. I felt my phone in my pocket, a rectangle of quiet reassurance. Before stepping from the conservatory, I'd set my SOS timer. If I didn't check in by 7:45, a preset message with my location would go to Maya and Janet, and a non-emergency alert to the precinct. Belt and suspenders. I'd learn those too. Mom, Thomas said softer. If Halberd flips, we can't keep all the plates spinning. The bank covenants trigger. People lose jobs. Good people. Then you should have protected them sooner, I said. Not with lies. With structure. Jason's gaze cut to me. Structure is a luxury you buy with liquidity. You don't have enough of either. Maybe, I said. But I have something you don't. He raised an eyebrow. Enlighten me. History, I said. The parts of this town that still remember who showed up when nothing penciled. You can rent a lot of things, Mr. Pike. You can't rent history. For a beat, none of us spoke. A gull sliced the sky and kept going. Jason sighed. Sentiment doesn't survive litigation. It survives everything, I said. Even children. The word landed like a dropped plate. Thomas looked away. I turned my attention back to him. I'm offering you an exit, Thomas. You meet my counsel tomorrow at noon, after the hearing, and you tell the truth under proffer. You cooperate, you get a path. Keep walking with him, and there won't be one. His laugh was small and tired. You going to hold my hand into the DA's office? If that's what it takes. Jason stepped between us without touching either of us. We're done. He nodded at the envelope still in his hand, then set it gently on my windshield. Midnight. After that, the price changes. Prices always change, I said. Value doesn't. He turned toward the SUV. Thomas didn't move. Mom, he said, voice low, you don't know that you're in debt? I asked. I know. That you're scared? I know. That you chose the wrong friend? I know. He swallowed. Then help me. I am, I said, by not letting you keep lying. His eyes glinted, something like fury skimming fear. If you take Halberd, everything breaks. No, I said. If I don't, you learn nothing. Jason called over, patience thinning. Thomas! Thomas held my gaze one more second, then followed him. As the SUV doors shut, my car alarm chirped twice. The SOS timer on my phone ticked past 7:45. Somewhere, a dispatcher would log a welfare concern tied to my plate number. Somewhere else, Maya would be watching a dot on a map. I didn't touch the envelope. I photographed it. Then, using a napkin from my console, I tipped it into a spare zipper pouch and sealed it. Evidence first, answers later. My tires had barely rolled when headlights washed the lot again. 2 cruisers. The first pulled up slow, the second idled by the curb. An officer approached my window. Ms. Price, we received a notification tied to your number. You okay? I am now, I said. I'd like to report a tracker found on my vehicle and an attempted coercion related to a pending civil matter. He took my statement, professional and bored, the way you get when you've seen everything twice. When he left, the sky had settled into that thin color between blue and ash. I exhaled, checked the time, and headed for the office. Janet and Maya were already there. Latex gloves snapped, a clean mat laid out like a field surgery tray. Drive? Maya asked. I handed it over. Chain of custody starts with Rachel, I said, careful with the name. Treat it like glass. Maya labeled the bag, initialed the tape, and began imaging. Janet wheeled in a portable whiteboard and wrote, TRO, 8 a.m., Halberd, LOI signed, Pike, active threat. I set the zipped envelope on the mat. Standstill and buyout offer, midnight deadline. We won't accept. Janet nodded. Then we need an exhibit that changes the weather in the hearing, not just sympathy. Incentive. Maya's screen filled with directories, board memos, Pike invoices, a draft vendor alignment agreement. Oh, she zoomed. Here, look at the signature block. We leaned in. A name I knew sat under Procurement Haston Foods, Halberd's fiercest competitor. The draft read like a bribe disguised as expedited onboarding. Kickbacks across the street, Janet said. If we show Halberd that, they'll call their GC at midnight and tell her to sharpen knives, I said. Good. But in the hearing, we can't make it a food fight about competitors. We need to show the court that I'm not raiding. I'm avoiding a rigged market. Maya scrolled again. Here's better. Northern Ridge's bank ledger. Transfers flagged for security consulting tied to Pike's LLC. Dates align with your blocked login attempts and the warrant timing. Chain it, I said. Show temporal overlap. Harassment. Attempted transfer. Warrant. Ex parte TRO. It makes a pattern, not an accident. Janet printed the exhibits and slid them into tabs. And your proffer invitation to Thomas? In my head, I said. Not in our filing. My new phone buzzed. A voicemail, no caller ID, transcription glitching around the edges. Briony, it's Daniel. I don't know what to do. He's saying, garbled, that if the hearing goes bad, we move cash tonight. I didn't vote for any of this. Please. Just silence. Don't hate me. I pressed the phone to my chest for a second longer than necessary. Then I hit save. Daniel? Janet asked gently. He's drowning quietly, I said. The family sport. Maya didn't look up. I've got something else. Metadata on the anonymous dossier to Halberd. Embedded author tag, JPike OPS. And the relay purchase? Card ending 4107. We can't subpoena, but we can present it as a forensic notation. Good, I said. Judge Patel likes clean lines. Janet stacked the last of the tabs and exhaled. Okay. Sleep in shifts? I looked at the wall clock, 10:11 p.m., and shook my head. No shifts. We'll go straight through. I promised Elena clean and calm. We show up early, pressed, and boring. Boring is my kink, Maya said, deadpan. It made us laugh, and the laugh made space to breathe. I opened the zipper pouch and slid the envelope onto the mat. Maya lifted the flap with tweezers and laid out the papers. Stand still. Purchase terms. Mutual non-disparagement. A clause that would gag me through the hearing. Not subtle, Janet said. One more doc, Maya murmured, sliding a thinner sheet free. Huh? Not part of the standstill. We all stared. A photocopy of a wire authorization. Signature, Daniel Price. Amount. A figure I recognized from Mark's haunted whisper at the diner. Destination. Northern Ridge Advisors. The room clicked into a deeper quiet. No, I said too fast. Daniel abstained. Abstained in a board vote, Maya said softly. He might have signed paper he didn't understand. Or he understood, and chose. I felt something fold and refused to tear. He's not built for this, I whispered. He thinks stillness is virtue. Janet laid a steady hand on the table, not touching the paper. We don't guess. We test. Call the bank in the morning. Verify the authorization log. If he was spoofed, we show it. If he wasn't, we deal with that too, I said. My voice found steel. But not before 8:01 a.m. Outside, a siren threaded the night and faded. The printer hummed, steady as a heartbeat. I wrote the final outline for the opposition. Narrow scope of covered clients. Anchor to dates. Show lawful enterprise steps. LOI, pilot, escrow. Document harassment pattern tied to Pike. Offer bond if the court needs comfort. Promise boring. At 11:37, my phone lit with a new email. Sender masked, subject blank, body a single line. Midnight isn't a deadline, it's a fuse. I stared at it until the clock flipped to 11:38. Then I did what I have always done when men threaten to turn my work to ash. I kept working. At 12:03, the building lights flickered, a pop in the hall, like a bulb dying. The air conditioner coughed and fell silent. Janet looked up. Breaker? Maya was already at the window. No, street's out too. In the sudden hush, my phone buzzed once more, an automated alert from the storage unit where we kept our off-site backups. Door opened. After hours. We looked at each other. 3 women in a dark room that still smelled like toner and resolve. Grab the go binders, I said. We're leaving. Now. We didn't pack like we were running. We packed like we were finishing. Binders, affidavits, a slim printer, 2 chargers, the thumb drive images, and 1 blue blazer pressed flatter than my nerves. Janet killed the lights out of habit, then remembered the outage and almost laughed. Muscle memory, she said, shouldering a canvas bag. Maya snapped her Pelican case shut. Storage unit first. If someone's inside, we don't play hero. We document and call it in. I nodded. No improvisations. We need to be boring by 8 km. The stairwell smelled like dust and rain. Our footsteps stacked on each other, a triplet rhythm you could march to. Outside, the block was blacked out except for the glow of a bakery's emergency light, 2 rectangles of gold floating in wet glass. We took Janet's car. Mine might still be hot with watchers. I texted Elena as we rolled through the empty grid. Power out on our block. Brief still on track. See you after hearing. Her reply pinged. Understood. Stay safe. The storage facility hulked at the edge of town, a long row of orange doors like a grin of bad teeth. 1 lamp over the keypad flickered, then steadied. Maya held a wipe over the pad before she typed, then photographed the screen when it read. Access granted. 12:21 a.m. Chain the chain, she murmured. We turned down the corridor to Unit 14C. The steel door was rolled down but not locked, the cylinder latch hanging like a tongue. I felt the prickle at the back of my neck, a childhood instinct that meant someone wants you small. Record, I said. Janet held her phone low, camera running. Maya lifted the door with her wrist bones, careful, and we let it rise to a chest-high slit. No movement, no breath. She pushed it the rest of the way. Inside, shelves, banker boxes, the old server I'd retired when I retired, a safe the size of a nightstand bolted to the floor. Nothing looked ransacked. Everything felt touched. Maya moved first, gloved and methodical. Footprints, she said, pointing to a smear in the dust by the safe. 2 pairs, 1 heavier, 1 narrow. Recent. Janet crouched by a banker box labeled Customer Audits H. The lid was askew. She slid it off, then hissed. They planted something. On top of our folders sat a manila envelope stamped confidential, pricing models in a font our company used a decade ago. The trap was elegant in the way of people who thought everyone else was stupid. Don't touch, I said. We bagged the whole box. Maya photographed the envelope. Edges, corners, a faint scratch on the flap. If we're lucky, they were sloppy. If we're not, at least we're first. She sealed the box in an oversized evidence bag from her kit. We'll have the lab run it with the tracker and the envelope from Pike. Pattern matters more than any single piece. I checked the safe. Our backup drives were still in their foam slots. The key I kept around my neck, on a chain I never took off, slid clean into the lock. The door opened on a small hum of cool air. Still cold, I said. The failsafe held. Janet steadied her breath. We move now. New location, new lock. Noted, Maya said. I'll rent a second unit under my name 2 exits over. Split storage. Never have all your eggs in one subpoena. We loaded binders and drives into the trunk. Every motion a bruise turned into muscle. Halfway through, a voice came from the mouth of the corridor. Going somewhere? We pivoted as one. Thomas stood under the flickering lamp, hands out, empty. No Jason, no shadows behind him. Rain had left his hair darker and his shirt clinging to a wrong confidence. "Alone?" I asked. "For once," he said. "Can we talk without your army?" I glanced at Maya and Janet. 2 minutes, I said. Camera rolls. No exceptions. He exhaled, and for a moment the boy with scraped knees flashed through the man who wore suits like armor. "They're going to move money tonight," he said, staring at the concrete floor as if answers lived there. "If the judge doesn't give us the TRO, Pike will pull a sweep to cover covenants before your pilot makes a dent. It'll hit vendor accounts first. The little ones. Crushing the people with the least cushion," I said. He nodded once. "I tried to stop it. And signed a wire anyway," I said, the memory of Daniel's name on the photocopy like a bruise rising. His eyes flicked to me, sharp. "Daniel signed?" "We found an authorization in Pike's packet," I said evenly. "The amount matches what Mark Lawson told me you owe." Thomas's face folded in a pain I didn't trust. "He got to Daniel. Or Daniel let him," I said. "And if he didn't, we'll prove that. But we only prove it if we get to court with clean hands and steady hearts. Why are you here, Thomas?" He looked past me at the safe. "Because I can't stop what starts at midnight. Because if you torch us in the morning, Pike burns the rest before anyone can see the books. And because—" He swallowed. "Because you were right. I forgot who taught me to build." "Then walk," I said. "Sit down with counsel tomorrow. Tell the truth." "You think truth buys you protection?" His laugh was short. "It buys you targets." "Targets we can see," Maya said quietly from behind me, "which is better than the ones we can't." Thomas's jaw worked. "You don't know Pike." "We're learning him," Janet said, "by chapter and verse." He took 2 steps closer. "If I send you something tonight, logs, emails, can you protect me?" "I can't grant immunity," I said, "but I can make sure the DA sees you first instead of last, and I can make sure the judge sees the pattern in the morning." He nodded once like a man deciding to jump where the water is cold. "Watch your car," he said. "The tracker isn't the only thing he stuck. He likes valve stems." Maya snapped a look at our tires. "Copy." Thomas turned to go, then stopped. "Mom, tell Rachel." He didn't finish, as if the words had to pass through a place he hadn't cleaned in years. "Tell her I tried." "Tell her yourself," I said. He left without looking back. The lamp buzzed, then steadied, as if the building exhaled relief. We finished the load, closed the unit, and filmed ourselves applying a new lock. Ours, not the facility's. Maya wrote the time on the tag and the tag in her notebook. "Where now?" Janet asked. "The courthouse," I said. "We're not sleeping anyway. We'll park under a camera and work in the atrium lounge until they open security." The city at 1:07 a.m. felt like a secret. We parked beneath a dome of CCTV lenses and set up at a marble table that had seen 100 sorrowed mornings. A janitor nodded and kept mopping. His floor shined so hard I could see us in it. 3 women and a stack of papers that were really stories. Maya imaged the planted box under a portable light, her face calm as surgery. Janet drafted our declaration about the outage, the tracker, the storage alert, the non-contact chain of custody. Every dull noun a brick in a wall. At 1:42 a.m., an email from Daniel Pricey slid onto my screen. No subject, no body, 12 attachments, log exports, access keys, a PDF scan of Pike's security consulting scope, 5 pages of euphemism and 1 last page with a scrawled note, D, run. J. I forwarded the lot to counsel and to Maya, then typed a reply I never thought I'd write. "You did the right thing. Come to court. Sit behind me. Say nothing unless asked. I will not hate you." A minute later, 3 dots blinked and vanished. No answer. We built until the clock said 3:19. We ate vending machine almonds like communion. At 4:02, the janitor switched to a fresh yellow bucket and whistled something that didn't know how to be sad. At 5:11, Elena texted, "Rumor is they'll argue irreparable harm using a letter from Hastings Foods. My GC says it's smoke. Stay boring. Boring, I wrote back, is our brand. At 6:03, a bailiff unlocked the side door and grunted a greeting. We moved to the small attorney conference room, where blue carpet met beige walls in a marriage of practical despair. I changed into the blazer and washed my face in the sink. The mirror gave me my mother's cheekbones and my father's stubborn. Maya laid out the binders in order. Janet clipped numbered tabs to my declaration and set a post-it at the paragraph that said, "I would post a bond if the court required comfort." "Coffee?" Janet asked. "After," I said. "Let's win our morning first." At 7:11, my phone buzzed with a single text from an unknown number. "Look up." I did. Across the atrium, on the second-floor balcony behind frosted glass, two silhouettes stood in still relief. One tall, hands folded. One shorter, a set of shoulders I knew, the way I knew the sound of my own name. Thomas. The taller silhouette lifted a hand, as if blessing a congregation. Then the frosted glass bloomed with a sudden, unnatural light, the cold white of a phone screen on record. Maya's head snapped up. "Live stream?" she whispered. Janet leaned to the window. "Not the courts. Private." The taller figure turned, and the glass caught the line of a scar like a drawn hyphen. Jason Pike smiled at the camera we could not see. Jason's silhouette didn't flinch. He held the phone like a chalice, the scar on his cheek a neat parenthesis around a threat. At 7:29 a.m., a bailiff stepped into the atrium. "No filming inside the courthouse," he barked. "Put it away." Jason bowed an apology he didn't mean and lowered the device. Thomas stared at the marble floor. We filed into Department 34. Beige walls, blue carpet. A clock that ticked louder than it moved. Judge Patel took the bench at 8:03, square-shouldered and alert, the kind of man who has no patience for theater before coffee. "On calendar," he said. "Price versus Price & Co. and temporary restraining order. Appearances." Petitioner's counsel stood. Gray suit, crisp vowels. "Jonathan Krell for the company." My counsel, Deirdre Harris, rose next, steady as a trestle bridge. "Deirdre Harris for Ms. Briony Price." Behind me, I felt Janet's presence like a hand at my shoulder. Maya's pen clicked once, and then was still. A seat over, a figure slid into place. Head down, tie crooked. Daniel. He didn't look at me. I didn't look away. Krell launched. "Your Honor, this is simple. Ms. Price is a legacy founder who has, post-exit, misappropriated proprietary pricing frameworks and solicited covered clients, most notably Halberd Foods. The harm to the company is immediate and irreparable." He slid a letter onto the lectern. "We offer this from Haston Foods, Halberd's principal competitor, expressing concern that Ms. Price is using shadow discounts derived from internal models." Judge Patel adjusted his glasses. "Specifics." Krell smiled thinly. "We will provide them in expedited discovery. For now, we ask the court to preserve the status quo." Deirdre didn't waste a heartbeat. "Your Honor, the status quo is a fiction crafted to cover a sweep. Ms. Price has formed a lawful enterprise. We have a signed LOI with Halberd, contingent on third-party hygiene and an escrow of 2 months' fees. We offered a bond this morning." She held up a tabbed binder. "We also present exhibits documenting a pattern of harassment and attempted fabrication. A tracker on Ms. Price's car, a planted envelope labeled confidential, pricing models in her storage unit. A flag transfer from her line of credit to a shell tied to Northern Ridge Advisors, and a warrant executed on our office based on logs controlled by a contractor with ties to—" Deirdre didn't glance back, but the word hung. "Jason Pike." Krell objected on reflex. "Hearsay about third parties, Your Honor." "Foundation?" Judge Patel asked. "Chain of custody begins with petitioner's own registered agent," Deirdre said, flipping to the metadata pages. "Embedded author tag J. Pike Opes. Payment for the relay that transmitted the so-called anonymous dossier was made by a card ending in 4107, matching records for Pike's LLC. We've included declarations from our forensic accountant and will submit the raw images to the court's neutral if appointed. Patel's gaze settled on Krell. Counsel, do you have a declaration naming specific documents Ms. Price allegedly took? Krell cleared his throat. Not at this time. Do you have evidence that the Halberd LOI was obtained using your property? Again, Your Honor, expedited discovery. And the Hastings letter, Patel said, tapping the exhibit, says only that they are concerned, which is not a synonym for evidence. Silence pressed into the carpet. Deirdre kept it boring, clean. We propose a narrow mutual order, no use of proprietary artifacts, preservation of all devices, and a forensic neutral to image systems on both sides. Ms. Price will post a bond. The court should otherwise allow her to continue lawful competition, including the Halberd pilot. Krell pivoted. Your Honor, if you deny the TRO, the company's covenants will trip. Vendors go unpaid, employees... Then perhaps the company should have sought relief sooner and with specifics, Patel said, not unkindly. This court does not freeze an entire market on adjectives. Behind counsel's tables, I felt Thomas tense. Rachel was not in the room. Her absence sat like a fact. Patel turned to me. Miss Price, stand, please. I did, palms dry against the skirt I'd steamed at 5:50 a.m. You understand, he said, that if I deny the TRO, you are not blessed to misappropriate anything, breathe on anything, or even think about anything that used to be yours. Yes, Your Honor, I said. I also understand that fairness requires specifics. A corner of his mouth twitched. Sit. He wrote for a long minute. The clock ticked like a metronome practicing patience. Ruling, he said at last. Petitioner's ex parte TRO is denied. The court issues a limited order, mutual preservation of evidence, no use or acquisition of proprietary materials, and appointment of a neutral forensic examiner at shared cost. The parties shall meet and confer by end of day on scope. Ms. Price's offer to post a bond is accepted at $100,000. Preliminary injunction hearing set on a fast track. Krell started to object. Patel lifted a palm. One more note. I do not know who Jason Pike is. I do know filming in my courthouse is contempt. If I see it again, I will not be patient. Sheriff? A deputy opened the gallery door. In the hallway, I glimpsed the edge of a navy windbreaker and a familiar jawline pretending not to be there. Patel rapped once. That is all. The room breathed. Deirdre squeezed my arm once. A pressure valve. Maya's pen clicked again and stopped. Daniel's breath shuddered like a man surfacing. We stepped into the corridor and straight into the flash of a dozen phones. Ms. Price, are you stealing clients? Are your children suing you to protect the business? Is there organized crime involved? Boring, I said to the air. We promised boring. My phone buzzed. Elena Morales. Saw the order. Compliance greenlights contingent start. 9 a.m. Monday. Keep it clean. Another buzz. Unknown number. A voicemail transcribed in jittery fragments. Briony, it's Mark. Lawson just got a notice. Vendor sweeps hitting. Small guys first. Thomas, he... Static. Pike. Cut. Janet grabbed my elbow. Look! Down the hall, Thomas stood alone, without counsel, without Jason. He watched the questions batter me and then looked at Daniel. For a moment, the two of them were simply brothers. One drowning loudly, one drowning quietly. I stepped toward them. Thomas. He shook his head once. Halberd goes to you. The sweep triggers tonight. He'll make sure the bank calls it risk management. Then give me the ledger, I said. Let me hand the DA a map and a reason to freeze him instead. His jaw flexed. He opened his mouth, closed it, looked past my shoulder. Jason leaned against a pillar as if he'd grown there, two security guards hovering like moons tugged by a worse planet. He smiled the smile that says, I own the angle. Ms. Price, a voice said to my left. A woman with a press badge, hair pulled back in a clean knot. Off the record, are you afraid? Yes, I said, and I'm working anyway. Thomas flinched as if the word were a door slamming. He turned and was gone, swallowed by a tide of blue carpet and beige walls. Janet pressed a folder into my hands. Bond paperwork. We'll post now. Then halberd prep and the Lawson pilot status check. Maya's calling the DA's intake. Maya walked toward us, phone at her ear, face unreadable. They'll take a meeting at 12:30 if we bring Pike's ledger and the relay purchase records. They want to see pattern. Good, I said. We have pattern. We were 3 steps from the elevator when my phone vibrated again. Unknown. Check your email. Subject valve. An inbox ding. One message. No body. An attachment. A photo. My car's rear tire, up close. The valve stem cap removed. A thin metal sliver pressed into the stem, barely visible, like a splinter waiting for motion. Don't drive yours, I told Janet. We'll take a ride share. Cameras and plate readers all the way. She nodded, already tapping. Another buzz. Text from Elena. One more thing. Someone used a masked relay to send our board a clip of you with Pike in a hallway. Edited to look like a negotiation. We know it's fake. But PR will call. I'll answer with delivery dates, I typed. In the elevator, the metal reflected a woman I recognized. The lines deeper, the eyes steadier. Fear had been here. It had put its feet on my table and eaten my bread. I was still standing. We hit the lobby when the call came that knifed the air clean. Daniel. I sent the full dump. Logs. The sweep schedule. Pike knows. Pier 12. The old ferry slip. 10 minutes. If I don't show, it's because I couldn't. The message timestamp blinked 10:06 a.m. Pier 12? Janet said. Waterfront, Maya said, already mapping routes with her eyes. 10 minutes means he's nearby, or he won't be. I felt my heartbeat steady like a drum calling a march. We're going. Maya lifted a hand. If it's a trap, we don't spring it alone. 2 cars, public place. Call it in as a welfare check en route. I nodded. And bring the ledger printouts. If Daniel comes, we walk him straight to the DA at 12:30. The courthouse doors whooshed. Outside, the day had sharpened into something clear and thin, sunlight cutting through a sky scrubbed by last night's storm. Somewhere, on a shadowed pier, my quiet son had decided to speak. We started running. Monday broke clear and hard, the kind of sky that makes promises it has no intention of keeping. By 6:20 a.m., I was at Halberd's West loading dock with a clipboard and a heartbeat I could hear in my teeth. Janet checked radios, safety vests, and vendor check-ins. Maya stood beside a portable workstation like a lighthouse keeper, watching telemetry scroll in thin green lines. Pilot window opens in 40, Janet said. Drivers staged, temp monitors synced. I nodded, letting the rhythm of competent people settle over me. This was the part of work that felt like prayer, lists and timing, and the dignity of doing the next right thing. At 6:31, my phone buzzed. Deirdre. Bond posted. Neutral examiner appointed. Opposing counsel already stalling scope. I'll keep them busy. You keep the freight moving. I typed back one word. Moving. We started with the fragile lanes. Produce and dairy. The routes where hours are measured in melt. Dock 2 ready? A voice crackled. Dock 4 clear. Another answered. At 6:47, a forklift beeped backward and my future exhaled. Elena stepped out from the glass corridor above the floor, her hair in a severe knot, her expression clean as a blade. She didn't wave. She didn't need to. The first truck kissed the bumper, and we began. Labels scanned, seals checked, thermal logs clipped to digital manifests like proofs of life. For the next 40 minutes, I forgot I had children. I forgot I had an enemy with a scar and a phone and a borrowed smile. There was only throughput. Container 9 temp rising, Maya murmured. Cause? I asked. Sensor drift, she said. Resetting. There. The line settled. I breathed. At 7:28, the world tried to break the room. 2 men in windbreakers showed badges at the security desk. DOT inspectors, unscheduled. Another cluster of people flowed in behind them, all lanyards and questions. PR, legal, someone with a ring light. Janet moved first. Inspections welcome, she said brightly. We love safety checks. We log them, we frame them. She glanced at me and I saw it. Not panic. Drill. I walked to the inspectors with a copy of our pilot plan and a smile that had no sugar. We have concurrent operations that cannot be interrupted. You're free to observe and to select 2 lanes for detailed review. We'll mirror your findings in real time. The taller inspector blinked. He was expecting flustered. He got procedure. Lane B and Lane D, he said. Done, I said. Maya? Mirroring, she replied, fingers already on keys. The PR woman with the ring light leaned toward Elena. Is it true your new vendor is under investigation? Elena didn't look at her. It's true we're moving freight on time. Please step aside. I wanted to applaud. At 7:42, my new phone buzzed with a text that lunged for my throat. From Daniel. He knows I sent it. He moved the sweep up. Today. Noon. I'm sorry. A second message followed, a pin drop on a map near a marina. No words. I forwarded both to Maya and Deirdre. Maya's reply was immediate. Got it. Ledger corroborates. Noon sweep targets small vendors and a bridging account labeled NR Ops. Deirdre. I'm on with DA intake. If we can show imminent harm, we can ask for an emergency freeze on Pike's shells before noon. I need one more concrete exhibit, preferably a transaction instruction. I stared at the loading dock clock. 2 hours and change. Janet, I said softly, prep a call list for the small vendors on our lanes. Tell them to hold any withdrawal approvals until they hear from us or their bank fraud team. No panic. Just pause. On it, she said, already dialing. Elena stepped down to the dock and stood close enough that I could see the fine lines at the corners of her eyes. We knew they'd push, she said. We didn't know they'd trip our alarms this fast. They're out of rope, I said. Men who are out of rope set fires. Extinguishers are staged, she said. Are yours? Always, I said. At 8:03, a new message slid onto my screen. No sender, no subject, just a photo. A halberd pallet with our pilot stickers, and a fake recall placard taped to the side. Hold, contamination risk, do not ship. My stomach dropped. Sabotage by implication. Maya was already moving. Checking lot cameras. Found it. 2 minutes ago, a man in a high-vis vest we don't recognize placed the placard and walked. Badge was blank. Freeze that frame, I said. Send to Elena's security and our evidentiary folder. Elena tapped her radio. Close dock 3 doors, internal check only, no announcements. The inspectors watched, interested. I let them. Let them see us handle a lie with process. At 8:19, the DA's intake coordinator called my line. Ms. Price, this is Silas Grant. Ms. Harris says you have live evidence of an imminent sweep related to vendor accounts. Yes, I said. Ledger entries and a schedule. We'll need an affidavit and a prosecutorial memo, he said. And I could hear the machine trying to spin faster than it was built. Can you be at our office by 10:30 with your accountant? Pilot launch, I said. We can't leave. A beat. Then, if you can transmit clean scans and a sworn declaration by 10, we'll seek an ex parte freeze by 11. Done, I said. Check your inbox in 20. I hung up and looked at Maya. Can we build it? We're building it, she said. Janet stepped in. Vendors are pausing withdrawals. 2 already got friendly calls asking them to approve new auto drafts labeled security retainers. I told them to send me recordings. Good, I said. We stitched the pattern. For an hour we moved freight, gathered proof, and laid bricks. By 9:36, Maya had packaged the ledger excerpts, the relay purchase record, the tracker photos, the planted envelope still sealed in its bag, and Daniel's logs, each with a clean index and a declaration shell. I signed while watching a pallet jack glide past my toes. At 9:51, we transmitted to Deirdre and Silas with chain of custody notes. At 10:03, Deirdre texted. Filed. DA drafting request now. If granted, freeze hits at 10:57. We need your vendors ready to cheer when they can't be swept. At 10:57? Janet repeated, doing the math aloud. 3 minutes before the sweep. Right where it hurts, I said. The ring light PR woman hovered again, sensing the pulse of a story. Ms. Price, off the record, do you think you can actually stop this? No, I said. But I think we can make it so expensive they stop themselves. She blinked, then lowered the light. At 10:32, the inspectors finished their review of Lane B and Lane D. Clean, the taller one said. Your controls are tighter than most. We built them with failure in mind, I said. It's the only honest way. He nodded once, as if he'd been waiting to hear someone say that all morning. At 10:41, my phone lit with a video call from an unlisted number. I didn't answer. It lit again. And again. I sent it to voicemail. A transcript arrived seconds later. Briony, you're very busy. But you forgot something. Supply chains cut both ways. Lovely son you have. Quiet. Useful. If the freeze hits, I'll pull a different lever. Your pilot runs on time only if I let it, Jason. I steadied my hands and forwarded it to Silas with one line. Threat tied to critical infrastructure. Consider an urgency. Maya watched my face and didn't ask. She didn't need to. At 10:55, we gathered in a small circle by a rolling cart. Me, Maya, Janet, Elena. We didn't hold hands. We weren't that kind of story. Status? Elena asked. Scans complete, Maya said. Affidavits transmitted. Vendors on standby. Inspector notes favorable. DA? Elena asked me. Any second, I said. The second came slow and then all at once. At 10:57, my phone chimed. Silas. Order signed. Freeze in effect. Service initiated to Northern Ridge, J. Pike LLC, and 3 shells. My lungs remembered air. Do it, I told Janet. Call the vendors. Tell them to try to move $10. Let the failure be proof. She grinned and dialed. Across the dock, the inspectors shook our hands, then walked out into a day that had decided to be bright after all. I allowed myself 1 minute of the luxury of stillness. The minute ended with a siren that wasn't ours. The backup generators hiccuped to life and failed again. Lights stuttered. A cold alarm cried out from somewhere deep in the building. Maya's eyes snapped to the telemetry. Cold chain drop on line 3, temp rising fast. That's the yogurt run. How? Elena demanded. We have redundant. She stopped. We all saw it at once. A cluster of sensors reporting OK, while the master readout screamed, hot. Spoofed values. Manual check now, I said. Open the door, probe the first 2 pallets, log the actual. On it! A dock lead shouted, already moving. My phone buzzed. Another message from the unlisted number. Pull a lever. Watch a room sweat. 10 minutes to ruin a morning. 5 to ruin a name. I closed my eyes for 1 heartbeat, then opened them. Janet, pull the line 3 trucks off the schedule. We'll run line 4 to fill gap. Maya, isolate the sensor subnet and roll to hardwired backups. Elena, get your facilities team to the generator room with a camera rolling and an oath to the truth. Copy, they said, like music. We rerouted, we lifted, we worked. At 11:06, the dock lead shouted from the cold room door, actual temp stable, spoof only, product safe. Maya smiled, fierce and small. Backups online, spoof isolated. Whoever's playing is outside the wall now. I exhaled, and the exhale tasted like iron and victory. My phone buzzed 1 more time. New email. Subject. Daniel. When I opened it, there was no text. Only a live location dot traveling steadily toward the river, and then stopping at a point labeled simply Pier 12. The blue dot did not move. Pier 12 sat like a broken tooth on the river's gray jaw. Wind knifed through the pilings, carrying the smell of diesel and something older, rotted rope, fish, secrets. A gull screamed. Somewhere, a winch creaked like a warning. We arrived in 2 cars, just like Maya insisted. Janet pulled into the public lot by the bait shop. Maya and I rolled to the curb under a camera that blinked red like a patient heartbeat. "Welfare check is in the system," Maya said, eyes on her screen. "Dispatch recorded at 10:12. Units are en route." 2 minutes, Janet breathed, meeting us by the newspaper box. Maybe 3. I tucked my hands in my pockets so I wouldn't wring them. Look for Daniel, not for trouble. We moved together, 3 figures against a weathered boardwalk. Boats knocked gently against their bumpers. The river wore the color of old pewter. The dot on my phone sat still. Pier 12, Slip C. "Cameras?" I asked. Maya nodded toward the bait shop awning. "One there, one on the ferry shack. No live access. We'll ask for footage after." We turned down the pier. Slip A, empty. Slip B. A tarp flapped like an unmade bed. Slip C. "Daniel," I said. He was there, sitting on the edge with his feet hanging over black water, elbows on knees, head bowed. A jacket I recognized. Mine, from the college winters when I learned to keep them warm with borrowed cashmere and soup that stretched. "Daniel," I repeated, softer. He lifted his face. A bruise bloomed high on his cheekbone, the violet just beginning. His eyes were glassy, not from tears but from that raw oxygen that comes after a sprint you weren't built to run. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what?" I asked. "For all of it," he whispered. "For being quiet." I crouched, ignoring the cold that tried to climb my knees. "You sent the dump." "That wasn't quiet." "I didn't send it soon enough," he said. Behind us, footsteps tapped the boards. Janet turned, shoulders squaring. 2 figures approached, a harbor master in a faded cap and a man I didn't know. Younger, tan line at the ring finger. "You the ones who called?" the harbor master asked. "Yes," Maya said, showing her phone. "We're fine. He needed a ride." The young man's gaze snagged on Daniel's bruise. "You want me to call an ambulance?" "No," Daniel said quickly. "Please don't." The harbor master studied us, looked at the empty slip next door, as if reading a tide chart none of us could see. "Word of advice," he said. "If someone offers you a ride from this pier that isn't the ferry, say no." "We will," I said. "Thank you." They moved on. We had the length of a held breath before the next wave. Daniel slid off the edge and stood swaying. "He knew I was sending it," he said. "He said if I didn't clean it up, he would. He said, accidents happen." "Jason?" I asked. Daniel nodded. "And Thomas?" His mouth flattened. "He's in too deep. He thinks he's negotiating. He's not." Sirens drifted toward us, distant, directionless. "Okay," I said, forcing my voice steady. "We're walking you back to the main road. We'll take a rideshare straight to the DA's office. You sit behind me. You say nothing unless asked." He closed his eyes like a man stepping into a confessional. "Okay." We turned. The ferry shack door opened. Thomas stepped out first, hair damp, jaw tight. Behind him, Jason, smiling with his hands folded as if in prayer. My stomach went cold and small. "Family reunion," Jason said lightly. "How sweet." Janet shifted, putting herself half a step in front of me. Maya's phone angled, camera catching faces, distances, shadows. "Daniel," I said, not looking away from Jason. "Walk, now." Daniel didn't move. "Mom," Thomas said, voice brittle. "Don't do this here." "Do what?" I asked. "Keep my son alive?" Jason's smile thinned. "He's melodramatic. He sent some spreadsheets. Boys will be boys." "You planted warrants," I said. "You spoofed censors. You tried to sweep vendor accounts like a flood. Boys won't be boys in front of a judge." Jason looked bored. "Allegations belong in pleadings, Ms. Price, not on piers." He flicked his eyes at Daniel. The look had weight. Daniel flinched. "Come on," Thomas said to his brother. "Let's go." "We're not going with you," Daniel said. His voice surprised me, quiet but squared. "I sent it." Jason took a step forward, shoes silent on wet boards. "Daniel, don't confuse guilt with courage." Maya's finger tightened on her phone. "We're recording," she said. Jason's head tipped. Hello, documentary. The river breathed. Somewhere a horn blew 3 mournful notes. Lifeguards are coming, Janet said conversationally, eyes on the harbor master who'd turned around and was watching from a polite distance. With badges and forms. Jason didn't look. He didn't need to. They'll be too late, he murmured. I felt the moment flex, like a film about to tear in the projector. Thomas, I said, this ends now. Tell him to leave. Walk away and meet counsel at noon. His eyes cut to mine. I saw my son there, and the man who had learned to live with shortcuts, and the boy who once hid a broken beaker behind the garage because he didn't want me to be disappointed. Mom, he said, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, I said. I just don't agree. Jason's hand moved. Not for a gun, just for the phone in his pocket. But Daniel flinched like it was a pistol. His heel slipped on algae slicked into the planks. His arms pinwheeled. The world jerked sideways. Daniel! I lunged. He caught the railing with his left hand. His right scrabbled and found nothing but air. The river below was a coin face, flat, cold, waiting. In that always too long second, 3 things happened. A shout from the harbor master. Hey! Janet's hand closing on my sleeve. Jason's voice, soft as silk. Careful. I tore free. Mom, Thomas said, half warning, half plea. Daniel's fingers slipped. He fell. The sound was a dull slap, water punishing skin. By the time his face surfaced, I was already moving, coat off, shoes gone, phone shoved into Maya's hand. Throw her the ring! Janet yelled, sprinting to the orange lifebuoy. I didn't wait for it. The river burned like knives. It closed over my head and made me 12 again, in a YMCA pool where the lifeguard shouted not to run and I ran anyway. I broke the surface, gasped, turned. Daniel! He bobbed once, then went under, dragged by the heavy geometry of his soaked jacket and the weight of everything he hadn't said. I dove. Cold narrowed the world to a tunnel and a hand. I found his sleeve and pulled. I thought of spreadsheets and lullabies, of forklifts and fever checks, of the way babies kick the air with the same stubbornness men reserve for staying alive. We rose crookedly. I got an arm around his chest and kicked hard. Here! Janet shouted, the life ring arcing in clumsy grace. It splashed an arm's length away. I hooked it under Daniel's arms and shoved his weight into it. Breathe, I commanded. Breathe now. He coughed, a rattling that sounded like a machine clearing a jam. On the pier, feet pounded. The harbor master threw a line. Maya gripped the rope and hauled with a strength I'd only ever seen at 3 a.m. over audit binders. And above us, Thomas and Jason, silhouettes cut out of a brighter sky. Help! I shouted at my sons. Pull! Thomas froze. Jason did not. He stepped back into the shadow of the ferry shack and raised his phone, framing us as if we were a tableau to be captioned. Sirens clawed closer. Briony! Janet screamed. Grab the line! I did. The rope burned my hands and felt like hope. We inched toward the pier. Almost there, the harbor master grunted, boots planted, arms braced. Almost. A crack split the morning. Not thunder, not wood. Gunfire. The life ring jerked in my hands. Daniel's body lurched, his gasp cut off like a radio switched from on to off. Down! Maya yelled. The river took us both under again. Above, I heard the heavy rush of bodies. Boots running, a shout that sounded like Thomas, a barked command that sounded like police. Another shot. A splash somewhere. Not us. My chest screamed. The surface was 4 inches away and also a mile. I kicked. The world smeared to silver. We broke into air heaving. Hold! The harbor master roared. Hold them! Hands grabbed the line from 3 places at once. Janet, Maya, someone in a uniform. We skated across the surface like badly trained otters and hit the pilings with a force that bruised both of us back into now. They hauled Daniel onto the deck. Blue lips, eyes half open, water pouring out of his mouth with the stubbornness of a vendetta. Stay with me, I said, slapping his cheek lightly, the way you do with loved ones and stories. Daniel, stay. The paramedics came like a promise delivered late. Someone wrapped a blanket around my shoulders that felt like tin foil and mercy. I turned my head, searching the pier. Jason was gone. Thomas was on his knees, hands raised, police shouting. His face was a country I did not recognize. Grief and terror, and a boy caught between. Ma'am, a voice near my ear, a cop with kind eyes. We need names. Now. I gave them. One by one. Each a stone set on a riverbank so the flood would remember where to stop. They lifted Daniel onto the gurney. He groaned. Alive. Janet pressed my phone into my hand. On the screen, a message from Silas waited. Freeze executed. Accounts blocked. Warrant secured for Pike's office. Bring any live footage. I looked at Maya. She nodded. Breathless, triumphant and furious at the same time. We got his voice, she said. He talked. Who? I asked. Jason, she said. On my video, threats and all. Behind her, officers moved, barked, cordoned. The ferry shack door swung on its hinges. On the water, the wake of a small boat frayed into nothing. I stood up too fast and the world tilted. Janet steadied me. We're not done, I said. No, she agreed, but we're closer. A medic touched my elbow. Ride with him? Yes, I said. I'm his mother. I climbed into the ambulance and watched the pier narrow to a postage stamp through the back window. Thomas turned his head, searching, as if he'd heard a word he still might recognize. The siren climbed. The river fell away. And in my pocket, my phone buzzed. One new message, no name, no body. Just a live thumbnail of a video feed. My office hallway. Our door. Someone's hand moving toward the knob. The ambulance smelled like plastic and hope. Daniel's fingers were cold under the blanket, but when the paramedic asked him to squeeze, he did. Twice. The second squeeze was stronger. I watched the monitor and pretended each green pulse was a year I'd get back. My phone kept vibrating in my pocket, a bead desperate to be born. I pulled it out. The live feed from our office hallway showed a hand hovering over the knob, then withdrawing, then hovering again like a moth deciding on a flame. I texted Maya and Janet. Intruder at office now. Live feed. Call precinct. Send clip to Silas. I'm riding with Daniel to St. Vincent's. Maya. On it. Patrol rerouted. We have the bait camera looping. If he plants, we catch the plant and the planter. Janet. Halberd still moving. Line 4 at 99%. Elena. Solid. The ambulance doors swung open into white corridors and fluorescent daylight. They rolled Daniel away, and something in my chest unclenched because movement, any movement, was not loss. A detective with river wind still in his jacket met me by the admissions desk. Ms. Price? Detective Hayu. Units hit your office just now. The intruder fled as they arrived, left a duffel. Contents: a burner phone, 2 counterfeit recall, do not ship placards, and a USB labeled pricing models. Latents on the USB casing match a Jason Pike associate, one Ramon Keller. He's in the wind. Jason? I asked. Warrant's out, Shu said. Your ADA friend just got it signed. I exhaled, slow. Good. Also, he added, a cruiser found your son Thomas in the courthouse lot. He asked for a ride to the DA's office. Says he wants to talk. For a second, the world's volume turned down. Let him. Shu nodded and left as the ER doors swung again. Rachel strode in from the opposite corridor, hair wet, eyes rimmed with sleeplessness. For a beat, we just looked at each other, the old arguments like moths we could let die. How is he? She asked. Alive? I said. Stubborn. She swallowed. Good. We stood there with the beeping machines and the soft shoes of nurses passing like ordinary angels, and I realized I wasn't angry at her anymore. Anger had done its work. It had moved the freight. Rachel, I said, thank you for the drive. It mattered. She nodded, throat tight. I don't know what Thomas will do. He's on his way to tell the truth, I said. That's a start. My phone lit. Maya. DA ready for us 12:30 as planned. I have Jason threats on video, Keller's prints, relay purchase records, ledger, and the duffel contents chain. Janet's keeping Halberd steady. Can you make it? I looked at Daniel through the glass, an IV climbing into his arm like a patient vine. I looked at Rachel, who had the face of the woman I raised and the woman I fought. I'll make it, I said. By 12:27, we were in the DA's building. Beige walls, blue carpet, a different courthouse with the same color scheme of pressure. Deirdre was already seated with Silas. Maya had the evidence spread in neat rows like instruments for an honest surgery. Thomas sat at the end of the table, hands open, face lined in a way ambition never predicts. Silas began with the voice he kept for rooms like this. We're moving for a freeze, which you saw this morning, and now a warrant we just executed at Pike's office. We have video of threats, a pattern of sabotage, financial records indicating a planned sweep, and physical evidence from your office. Mr. Price. He looked at Thomas. We also have your email authorizing Keller's entry to the headquarters at hours the security logs call maintenance. You ready to talk? Thomas looked at me, not at the prosecutor. Yes. He told them about the first meeting with Pike's fund, the terms that sounded like oxygen and became a rope, the double-booked invoices, the shell companies with clever names that all meant the same thing, hunger in a fine suit. He admitted to the pressure calls to vendors. He admitted to the letter to Halberd's board. He said, "I'm sorry," in a tone that was not meant for me or for court, but for himself. Silas took the statement clean. "This buys you nothing," he said, not unkindly. "But it helps us, and we'll remember." Rachel slid a folder across the table. "Board memos, meeting polls, and my resignation draft," she said, voice steady. "Effective today." Thomas flinched. "Rach, I won't burn for you," she said. Her eyes flicked to me, then back. "I'll testify." Silas stood. "We're going to arrest Pike. If he runs, we'll make him famous. Ms. Price, you keep doing your job. I prefer my cases with defendants and functioning supply chains." "Copy that," I said. Janet texted as we stepped into the hallway. Halberd pilot threw lunch clean. Inspectors left happy. Elena says, "Next week's schedule green." I allowed myself one smile. Then the smile was gone, replaced by the thing that had gotten me this far. Lists. We posted the bond with the clerk. We executed the neutral imaging order with the court-appointed examiner. We walked Thomas to the interview room and watched the door close without turning into fire. At 3:08 p.m., Shu called. "We have Pike." He paused, and I realized the words carried a relief he didn't let himself feel often. Pulled over 2 miles from the state line, his phone lit with the duffel photos and the pier footage while we cuffed him. Defense lawyers already circling. "Let them," I said. He added, "And Ms. Price, if Daniel gives a statement later, we'll take it gently." "Thank you," I said, and meant it. By 4:00, I was back at Halberd, hair still damp, blazer smelling faintly of river and printer toner. Elena met me on the dock with the calm of someone who knows storms and the difference between wind and weather. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like I finally remembered which tools are mine," I said. "Good," she replied, "because you're on schedule, and schedule is worship here." We watched a last pallet slide into place, signatures bloom on tablets, clocks tick toward a number we'd promised and met. The day kept its promise back. That night, after statements and scans and the kind of paperwork that rebuilds a world, I sat in Daniel's hospital room. Machines hummed prayers. His color was human again. When he opened his eyes, he found mine. "I didn't mean for it to go like this," he said. "I know," I answered, "but this is how we finish it." He blinked. "Is it finished?" "Not the legal part," I said. "But the story we're writing about ourselves can be." He nodded, and then a small, tired smile. "You jumped." "Habit," I said. "I prefer boring, remember?" He laughed, and the sound unknotted something I didn't realize was still tight. 2 weeks later, the halberd pilot ended clean and early. We renewed at the same rate, no games. The DA indicted Pike and Keller on conspiracy, fraud, and tampering. The preliminary injunction hearing came and went without drama. The neutral examiner's report was dull in all the right places. Rachel resigned on a Friday, testified on a Monday, and met me for coffee on a Wednesday. We spoke for an hour about everything except the company. Thomas took a deal: cooperation in exchange for leniency and a ban from executive roles for 5 years. He asked to see me. I said yes, in a room with windows, with Deirdre down the hall, with nothing left in my pockets that could be stolen. I thought building meant never giving an inch, he said. It means knowing where the inch belongs, I answered. Some of it belongs to you. Some belongs to people you'll never meet. Some is mine. He swallowed. I'm sorry. I know, I said. Be useful now. He nodded. On a Sunday morning, months later, I walked the Halberd dock at dawn. The bay smelled like salt and a beginning. Janet waved from a forklift she had no business driving. Maya sat on a stack of pallets, drinking coffee like victory. The wall map in our office had new pins, the honest kind, with names and dates written in my hand. The red pin from the night they tried to scare me sat in a bag labeled Evidence, then moved to a box labeled Archive, then to a shelf called Past. Here's the lesson I wrote for myself, and for any woman who has ever mistaken loyalty for a contract signed in blood. Family is not a non-compete, and love is not a gag order. Build clean, keep receipts. Price to truth. When they try to turn your competence into a crime scene, invite in the light and let the work speak. Choose boring when you can. Jump only when you must. I am Briony Price. I lost a company. I built another. Both times I kept my name.